Are you ready to become a hometown hero with your home service company? What's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maskell, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous business. Today we have with us Tim Brown. Tim is the CEO of Hook Agency, a Google paid ads, SEO, and web design firm that's gone from one person to 30 in 6 years, championing roofing companies, HVAC companies, and home service businesses by helping them drive more traffic and leads, has led him to growing his team and learning to lead to be more useful. Content strategy, persuasive web design, and actionable small business marketing are his biggest areas of expertise. So that is Tim Brown. Welcome, Tim. Thank you so much for being here. What's going on today?
Not much, man. Just, well, I guess I get to be on this podcast with you and then other fun stuff. I get a lot of fun stuff as an owner of this company now. The most fun stuff and then the least fun stuff. That's what I get to do.
Yes, and everything else in between the team is taken care of, but
Yeah.
I guess that's part of being a leader and building the team. You have some perks, and then you have
Yeah.
some downsides as well. So let's
Yeah.
get into your journey. Obviously, you've been running Hook Agency for, you started it yourself. Now you've got over 30 people, but how did your journey start to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I worked for another agency and I was freelancing on the side of that. I was bringing in business just from my own freelance work too. And then at a certain point, the freelance, and this was with permission from my employer, but at a certain point, the freelance revenue surpassed my salary. So I did the overlap method, and then when I went out on my own, one of the things I found most frustrating about the previous agency was that they weren't specialized. They had too many services and they also did it for too many types of people. So when I went out on my own, the big thing that ended up happening after the first couple of years is we ended up niching. Contractors was the biggest niche. And then in 2021, we said no more customers that aren't contractors. So we were trying to niche, but then the real niching moment was when we started saying no to new customers that weren't home service contractors. So, and then
Awesome.
the hiring, all the bumps and bruises of hiring people poorly and then learning how to make a culture and actually believing and trusting in a mission. And, we were on EOS or traction and we have a lot of other big kind of issues that have come up, and then you level up every time you kind of push past one of those issues, and we still have our issues today. And I think it's all very interesting, and marketing is fun. So I'm I actually love marketing. Personally, I enjoy it a lot. So I love marketing us, and I like creating new services and stuff like that for the company, and then handing them off to the team.
Awesome. So let's kind of dive into what you guys do at Hook Agency, and obviously,
Yeah.
you also have a book coming out here shortly. Depending on when people are
Sure.
listening, this book might already be out, but it's coming out August
Yeah.
1st,
August
2025,
1st.
and it's all about being a hometown hero. So, what does that mean for
Yeah.
our listeners who are owners of home service companies?
Sure. I think the easiest way to kind of put it is it's got a lot of things wrapped up into it. But I think one of the premises is the 5 Mile Famous premise, where it's market more to tighter areas. So that's really what I'm pushing. A lot of the chapters are about different ways to hit tighter areas more and become 5 Mile Famous. And then another big component that kind of is wrapped up in that idea is a lot of the high performance home service business owners that I studied as part of my process for writing this book, and whose voices are included at the end of each chapter of the book. There's kind of a case study at the end of each chapter, and it's from a home service leader, usually a CEO of a successful home service business. And a lot of these guys are doing more community marketing, charitable work, volunteering, and involving themselves in the community in a very deep way. And it was a curious thing. I mean, I think that's positive. We'd all say that's generally a positive thing, but I didn't realize how many of the bigger ones are all doing this. Everyone's doing this, from my friend Ty Cobb Backer from TC Backer Construction all the way to Tommy Mello of A1 Garage Door. There's just a lot of these big ones, they all have to some degree community involvement and charity at the center of what they're doing. So Hometown Hero is about getting really like the main thing I'm pushing is tighter service areas and getting like going harder on marketing, go harder, go home to smaller areas, including community involvement and any other ways to extrovert your way out into the community.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely dive into both of those. But the idea of 5 Mile Famous, we had Dan Antonelli on the podcast a long time ago, and obviously you're well connected with him and how powerful a brand is. When you're doing marketing, the better the brand, the easier it is to market and become 5 Mile Famous. But I was kind of tying the connection there of, your marketing agency really started to scale when you niched of, hey, we're only going to service contractors, home service companies. Whereas now, if we can get our home service company listeners to niche into, call it that 5 mile radius,
Yes.
we really realize how many people there are in a 5 mile radius, like how big that actually is, and how many people we can actually serve if we go all in on that one area before trying to expand further. And I love the idea of you actually have case studies of, hey, this is what people are doing and this is working. So let's hit on the 5 Mile Famous first, and then we'll get into the case studies of, being involved in the community. But what are some things that you have seen work really well to become 5 Mile Famous, whether it's boots on the ground type stuff or from the digital side?
Yeah, I think one of the weird things that people don't realize is how many, people are always trying to go outside their service area because they think that's where the opportunity is to make it happen, right? But we don't realize how much more of the current market that we could do, how much more is available, and I think 5 Mile Famous is fairly simple. You're marketing more times to less people because there's network effects. So just to give a little bit more of the why real quick, is there's network effects. When somebody knows one person that's used you, okay, that's somewhat persuasive. But if they know multiple people that have used you, word of mouth spreads faster. So by marketing to tighter areas, you're actually increasing the ability for word of mouth. And you're absolutely right. Totally goes directly with us and what we're doing. And first we niched hard into roofing actually. And now we're testing this strategy out in HVAC as well. But the initial thing was like, hey, how hard can you go in one niche and how much farther everything goes when that happens? And that totally relates to this. Just the simple things like the sandwich board out in front of your van when you're on the road or yard sign, consistently branded truck wraps. I think to Dan Antonelli's constant, if you follow him, he's just constantly talking about
drum
that.
He beats every day.
Yeah, but that's part of it. Geo-targeted Facebook ads in your top 3 zip codes. So, 5 Mile Famous, I'm using it loosely. It could be 10, it could be, but I'm not saying 20. I'm not saying 50. A lot of people are like looking at the whole metro area, and I'm saying, what about the quadrant in the metro area that you could? What's the best, tightest space for you? So geo-targeted Facebook ads to the top 3 zip codes with customer like testimonials. I mean, a lot of people are doing Facebook ads for leads and they get frustrated and they're like, why doesn't this work the way I do? And I know I'm not a contractor and we don't do Facebook ads for clients. So I'm not saying this to try to get money or anything like that. I'd spend $3,000 a month. Sometimes I think it's useful to share what I'm doing and then you can see if it applies to you, not me tell what home service contractors should all do this. So I spend $3,000 a month on Facebook ads. We're like a $6 million company, right? $3,000 a month on Facebook ads. And we get leads from them, but I don't care. I know that sounds like, I don't know what that sounds like, but I don't care. The leads are just like an indication that it's getting in front of the right people. I need to market. I need people to see our company more. You know what I mean? And I think my thing is like thinking about brand is really important. And once again, not what we sell, but brand is crucial. And the more you can, even though I sell lead generation, the more you can transfer over to brand and pushing power into a brand, which is like a store of value not just in the way Dan Antonelli talks about it, because I don't actually care that your brand is that pretty. I care that it means something. You know what I mean? So my thing is just pushing video testimonials to make your brand mean more. Sponsoring local teams and charities, and obviously like to get briefly into what we do, ranking on Google Maps. And you can do those things now, right? With reviews and posting every day on Google Business Profile, like treating Google Business Profile like it's a social media channel. And if you're not posting every day on social media, I don't know why you aren't. It's free and it's not that hard. Just answer the questions that customers actually have in the sales process, and tell them why you're different, and show what you want to grow. So that's a quick like 5 bullet points of like how to become 5 Mile famous, totally in the direction of this hometown hero idea.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of posting on. I mean, there's a lot of good things you hit on, and we'll kind of get into it. But posting on social, just answering questions your clients have. I'm sure, obviously, that you probably read the book "They Ask You Answer" by Marcus Sheridan.
Yeah.
If any
Yeah.
listener hasn't, read that book. Start answering questions your people actually have, so when they do need you, they trust you. There's transparency and all that.
By the
Fire
way,
away.
Marcus Sheridan wrote the foreword to my book. So like, and
Oh, there you go.
he's one of those guys that he's like super generous. So him and I went on a boat trip recently to deep sea fish, and he was talking about the way he thinks about intellectual property, because I've been preaching his system for years. He just doesn't think of it like, he's not like trying to hoard it. He wants it to get out there. So like I basically preach Marcus's system, but I'm like talking specifically for like HVAC, plumbing, and roofing companies, which, sometimes it's useful to have like really specific ideas for your type of business.
That is super cool. That's awesome. I didn't even know that that he wrote the forward to your book, because that time recording book's not out yet. But his system, like you said, it's tried and true. Now he's even taking it to the next level with his next book. But really, the more trust you can build with your clients, when they need you, they will call you. And I think even what you're talking about, being 5 Mile famous and spending money on Facebook ads, you see the posts all the time. Oh, I spent $3,000 on Facebook ads and I only got 2 leads. Well, the thing with home service companies is almost all of them sell something that people probably don't need the minute they see your brand. It's not like, oh, I do need my air conditioning fixed. I guess I'll call that guy, right? Like, but when we do need it fixed, we're going to think of who talks about it the most. What do we see it the most, and who's that company that's making a change in our community that we can make the call to. And as you know, a lot of times we don't go to Google the first time we need a service provider. We're going to go to our friends and family and neighborhood Facebook group and all that. And if 5 people recommend the same company, who are we going to call? We're going to call that the company that's been recommended by 5 people, because they are that hometown hero of, they're just crushing it within the 5, 10, 15 mile radius.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for getting in those local Facebook groups, and like a little next level is like, besides having you and your team be in the comments when somebody asks, and encouraging your customers to do that, like you can make a little thread and post it into a thread on Facebook to your team. Just my strategy personally, the way I actually do it is we go and thank people that recommended us, and we like their comment. So like I think it's usually about 3 people on my team in like let's say an HVAC group. If somebody's recommending us, we're going to like the comment and we're going to thank them. And it's like, it just makes people more likely to do it, right? It's like encouraging what you want people to do. And that has been huge for us. Facebook groups has been huge for us, and it's huge for home service businesses. They're just like, there's so much that, and next door, it's just being involved is the key thing there, and being like referring other people's businesses. So like if you're the type of person that's constantly referring other types of home service companies, then you're really attracting more of that for yourself. So that's been our strategy as well, just in the niche.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to becoming more of that 5 Mile Famous of people go to you when they, even if you're just a plumber, say all you do is plumbing, but people know if we go ask plumber Joe, hey, do you have a good HVAC company or do you have a good electrical company? Or you got a good roofer?
Uh,
If you become the go-to person that they trust, then when they do need plumbing, they're going to trust you as well. So
I
you
have a
mentioned a lot.
whole thing about that in the book, by the way, too. It's like being the guy who has a guy, right? And
Yeah.
it's there's like I want to transfer people's identities to this hometown hero thing. Like I want to get them like if you think this way, and like there's a bunch of components. The 5 Mile Famous is part of it. Being a super connector. That's what I think you just described. Being a super connector, or like another way to think about it would be like your home service mafia referral mafia in your area, because if you and 10 other home service businesses are just referring the heck out of each other, like it's crazy how much you can do with word of mouth. And I'm a marketer that does digital marketing, but like I really believe in word of mouth. And I think everything you do on digital marketing increases word of mouth. Like if I make a positive impression on Paul, and I think we'd be jumping the gun to say I've done that so far, but if I make a positive impression on Paul, Paul could recommend us to somebody else. And every interaction you have, including content marketing, like I'm doing now, and like in your ability to like make videos that positively reflect on other home service businesses in your area or just other small businesses, because I see people doing it with restaurants and shit. My friend Ben Tiger, Roof Tiger, he's had he's had a cop on his show. He had a realtor on his show. He has all these people that are super connected in the community. So that like the idea of being a super connector can like transfer into digital marketing and still positively increase the amount of word of mouth that you get.
Yeah, and I mean, I think our worlds are more integrated than ever between the word of mouth, between the digital marketing, and when they all kind of work together, it becomes this flywheel. But the idea of being a super connector, almost everybody listening to the show probably is. They just don't proactively do it. And I think where a lot of the
Uh-huh.
ball gets dropped is usually the owner isn't the technician in the home anymore, right? After say they get to $1 million, they're not in the home. And a lot of times the customer's asking the technician, hey, you've done an awesome job on our plumbing. By the way, we're also looking at finishing our third floor and we need some HVAC done. Do you know somebody? And a lot of times the technicians are like, I don't know somebody, but I bet our owner does. But then it just kind of stops there. Whereas if we can arm our technicians with the same connector
Mm.
mentality and create this whole thing, then it's like you said, we do have this mafia of we are 10 different,
Yeah.
companies serving the ideal customer in the same area, same ideal customer of we don't want to be the chuck in the truck and we want to provide value and do all those things. It can become super popular because a lot of times what happens, and as you know this, somebody will say, hey, go check out Tim. Tim is awesome. He's great at landscaping. They're going to be like, all right, cool, but I'm going to do a little bit of research on Tim. Now I'm going to research Tim's landscaping company, and if the Google reviews are there and they're posting constantly on social media and their website's providing value, they're like, all right, Tim's my guy because Joe told me Tim's my guy, and I just double checked that Tim's awesome. So I think that's where a lot of times,
Yeah.
like you said, how they all fully integrate of between the digital aspect and the
That's good.
in-person human action.
The
So
The digital
go ahead.
double check, let's call that. Even with even with word of mouth, people are doing the digital double check.
They are almost every single time. All right, like
I like
that's
branding
that's
things if you can't tell.
you, yeah, and you're doing a good job at it. So let's go into some of the things you talked about. We'll kind of dive into the community aspect and giving back to the community and how are some of those case studies playing out? What does that look like? Because I feel a lot of times any owner, it's a good idea. Right? They might do it when they first
Yeah.
start because they've got the time, and then it's like, oh, we've got
Sure.
enough work. I don't need to go to these events, or I don't need to sponsor this, or I don't need to spend time
Uh,
here. What are some things that are actually working as far as getting involved in the community?
yeah, I by the way, that's the best time to ever do it. If you're early, I'm proud of you because usually you don't have as much resources at that time. So if you're spending time doing stuff like this at the onset, community involvement, any kind of volunteering, donating, or anything like that, I'm super proud of you. I just want to say that. Um, what I see is like when people are involving themselves, like just giving money, and this is just like from a purely marketing perspective. Just giving money, I'm not sure is always is going to do as much. Like if you're giving to community things, but like involving yourself. So events, like just the corollary for us is like, yes, we have donated. I'm not trying to flex on all that, but events and getting out there and being around these groups of people, like figuring out where your ideal customers hang out and doubling down on them and like being around them and like engaging with the community. So for instance, a couple examples, Ty Backer in the book, TC Backer Construction, has a 21 turkey salute that he does around Thanksgiving. There's a lot of food insecurity in his area. And not only do they somewhat regularly volunteer, but they also do this big event. And they've gotten tons of news, but that wasn't the original point. You know, they've gotten tons of positive community energy. And his company is, he never tells me the revenue. He's a client of ours. He never tells me the revenue. I think it's just too big and he doesn't want people to like, you know, it's tens of millions. He doesn't want everyone. I like that kind of. I feel like people that are really, really got it like that sometimes hide the amount because it's a little, you know, the embarrassment of riches. But he's doing very well and the business has benefited from that a ton. There's a ton of people in this book, but a few more. Charles Antis has all of his leadership team, who's Antis Roofing. Sorry, I'm going to give a couple. There's some HVAC ones in there too, but I'm just going to give a couple of these because I know them the best. Charles Antis Roofing in California went from 15 to 30 million, and a big piece is every single person on his leadership team is on some kind of board for either a nonprofit or like an industry organization. So the community involvement there just creates connections. The ability to create connections it's hard. It's hard to, like, community leaders is a big one, right? Like being involved with community leaders. And if, you know, you kind of start to see these patterns emerge where like community leaders and people donating and people part of boards and people that are doing all this stuff are like, they run in the same circles. And you're starting to meet the people that have the multifamily, that do the big projects hey, and it's like people that have time because they have a big, you know, they're part of a bigger organization or they have systems in place that can go do stuff like volunteering, that can be involved in the community. In a smaller level, I mean, like in the book, we have Stephanie Allen from Airworks Solutions, and they're constantly involved in the community. And yes, every once in a while, you know, she was talking about how they go personally out to these events and like give treats or give something away, but they're out at and then she still does that, even though they're, you know, I think they're passing 10 million now. And that community family feel too. You still have it. Like, let's go, let's use it. Sometimes I think people are scared to use what they've got. And if you've still got the family oriented thing, her and her husband run the company and they have kids and they can go out and be involved in these things with other people with kids and give back. Just it creates a different vibe, you know. So whether it's giving or volunteering, or make sure it includes community involvement. And this is just me noticing this pattern. I don't think I would, you know, before I started writing this book, I don't think I would have realized I was pushing this hard by the end of the book. But once I saw all these people that I like, maybe that skewed a certain way. They're nice people. You know what I mean? There's cool, super cool business owners. And then there's ones that are like greedy and hoarding it all away. And then that are winning like at a pretty high level. Usually most of these people are like over 10 million bucks revenue. And like, you know, once you get to that point, there's a lot of things that open up in your life. And you get more freedom. And that's definitely helpful for happiness. And let's just be honest with that. And So I just kind of like I'm starting to push this more now that I'm seeing it's such a pattern with these businesses. And so I think my job, obviously with our services, is one thing, but then as like a journalist and somebody writing a book, was to share the stories of successful people and say, hey, this is what they're doing. And so I saw this pattern emerge that I was interviewing people about other things, and like half of them were doing something like this. So it doesn't mean everyone has to be super involved in the community, but I saw it as like a significantly larger amount of percentage of people that are doing this that are over 10 million than the guys that are 3 million. And I mean, it's a little bit of like you're just trying to struggle to survive sometimes in that like 0 to 3 million thing. But I think everyone that I think definitely a few people that I interviewed would say start as early as you can because it is a growth opportunity.
Yeah, no, I mean it's super cool, and I think it really ties back into the whole idea of, even going back to what we were talking about with branding of the more you appear in people's lives, the more you appear and it's kind of stick in their brain, and you're taking one of those spots in their brain for them to remember you. It's just going to be a lot easier to scale your business. And I don't know if anyone's ever went and volunteered and did something that felt good and said that wasn't worth it, even if you didn't grow your business, right? Like if you can take 3 or 4 hours out of
Yep.
your month, call it even, and do a team building activity to give back to the community, that that goes a long way, not just for your brand and not just for your community, but it also goes back to, people want to work at organizations that do cool stuff, and it's not all about work as well. And I think that's it. It's hard to measure the return on a lot of things we do in the community and marketing and branding. And obviously, you have these conversations every day with people wanting to make sure they're getting a return on the money they're giving you. But it's hard to put a number on those things. But if you do it year over year, eventually, like you said, you become that $10 million company. That's the super connector. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows your brand. They know who to call when they need something. And then you can go to be 10 mile famous, then you go to 20, then you go to 40. But when we can really niche down initially to really become an expert in that smaller area, is a recipe for success. So as we start to wrap this up, Tim, obviously the book's got a ton of great stuff in it. We've covered a lot of awesome, actionable stuff. But what's one thing that you want our listeners to hear that we haven't dug into yet? What's something that's just been burning
Yeah.
in your mind that more people need to do?
Yeah, I'll just note, like, a lot of marketing books would be outdated kind of quickly right now if they were super tactical. I think one thing to note is when you're studying marketing, if you're interested in this, if you're enjoying this, if it's fun for you to hear about this and to try things, because I see a ton of the best home service CEOs and leaders that are trying new things that they didn't get from an agency, that they built themselves, that they're doing awesome stuff. So I know a lot of you are out there that are actually interested in this stuff. I think it's to study the psychology and what creates memory in our customers, right? Like we want to be sticky and memorable. So a lot of this book is about the things that make you sticky and memorable. It's a study. Every chapter is about one thing that makes you sticky and memorable to customers. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We could advertise all day, but if it's not good, if there's no emotion to it, if it's just words and pictures that barely stir any humanity, and I'm not telling you not to use AI. I use AI all the time. Let's go. But I'm saying like the real difference now, because some things are a commodity, they get commoditized by AI, is finding where the difference is and like spending time developing that. So for me, it's communication, right? Like as a CEO, I need to communicate really, really well to my people. I need to communicate really well to my ideal customers, and I need to communicate to, my the world in a way that attracts the right people. And so I think studying what makes sticky communication is like the next thing. If everything else gets commoditized, study what makes sticky communication. And it's not it's not mispronouncing things, but maybe it is. Maybe it is failing in public sometimes because I think that a lot of people scrub out all the detail in their content. Like they get rid of all the mistakes. And I think that
There you guys have it. Be more real, be more authentic, just let it go. And, really, I think that's really what a lot of other people can connect with even more because it's like, wow, they're not perfect, just like I'm not perfect. Where we see a bunch of stuff on social media where you can tell they're doing it just for Instagram or just for a certain thing, and it's not actually being authentic. Tim Brown, thanks again for coming to the show, sharing your journey, and providing a ton of actionable advice, insight, wisdom for all the blue collar business owners out there as they strive to become 5 Mile famous. But before we sign off, where can our listeners go to either keep in touch with you or learn more about the book? Awesome, Tim. Appreciate it. Thank you again for the time today.